Well, welcome to this interview. Today, I, Chris Orr, am interviewing Trevor Scales, my fellow actor, in the Memory Gnome sagas. And today's interview is to talk to Trevor about his process, his rationale, nay, his philosophy of acting, in general and in particular for the part of Magnus Lafleur, Memory Gnome. So, hi Trevor.
Hi Chris, it's great to be here.
And it's great to have you here too, Trevor. Now, first of all, could I ask if you could give us your general rationale, nay, philosophy of acting?
Well, Chris, to me, my work, the body of work that I've done and I'm going to be privileged enough to do in the future, I view as sacred. My role more as an actor is more like a priest, really, a conduit, if you like, for truth, for heaven-sent information. I am a servant of the work, the great work that is written by these writers, the great directors and actors that I've worked with, and ultimately I am in service and in great debt to my audience.
So, would it be fair to say, Trevor, you are what is referred to in common parlance a method actor?
Well, Chris, I think you probably already know I'm not really very fond of that term. I think method actor, I think people that commonly associate that with people who are really rather trite and pretentious, and that's not really me, as you probably know.
Mm-hmm. So, exactly, from my understanding of people who have an approach to acting like yours, Trevor, is that they do a lot of extra work. They don't just turn up at the rehearsal space or the performance, but they do a lot of homework, a lot of preparation, a lot of being the character beforehand, being the character when they're younger, being the character in different, so on and so forth. So what particular things did you do to prepare for the role of Magnus Lafleur, Memory Gnome?
Well, Chris, thank you for asking that question. It's a subject really dear to my heart. For me, it's about being, it's about becoming, it's about unfolding. But it's about creation, Chris. It's about creating another being, Chris. And typically with Magnus, I had an area set aside at home where I would have laid out his clothes, his ornaments, his music he likes, his book, maybe samples of the food and drink he's like, and certainly photographs of his members of his family, his children, small shoes, a belt, a rod, perhaps a pamphlet that I've written up from his place of work.
That's very interesting, Trevor. So, did you actually go out into the real world as Magnus and engage that way to prepare more for him?
Absolutely, Chris. Yes, I went out there. I went to the sort of places where you would expect to find a gnome. I went to woodland areas, small streams, garden centres, that sort of thing.
Excellent, because you would find a lot of gnomes in garden centres. That's where they're most commonly found, Trevor. Now, so you'd put on the full gnome costume and fishing line.
Sorry, Chris, I don't really like that word costume. It's about clothes. But do you wear a costume? No, you wear your clothes.
Well, it's an audio recording. I just wear my normal everyday clothes.
I mean, about in the context of my work. As an actor, the way that I work, I don't put on a costume clothes, Chris. I become that person. They put on their clothes. There is a huge difference.
So when you've got on Magnus's clothes, Trevor, where typically would you go to continue this research into his character?
I would conduct very simple shopping expeditions, for example. I remember one day I went to my newsagent's and bought some mint imperials. I paid a gas bill in town, and so on and so forth.
Well, that's very interesting, Trevor. Now, I must say, I have been acting for many years, and Trevor is the first actor, in my experience, that's turned up to an audio recording in full clothing of the character.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Was that really necessary, Trevor?
It's not about being necessary, Chris. I'll tell you what this is really about. This is about commitment This is about love. I mean, true love.
Well, Trevor, that's certainly, very intense there. And I'd say, we're very different in our approach to acting. Trevor has this deep methodological approach with a lot of work outside, dressing in the clothes of the character, buying mint imperials, etc. Whereas I just sort of turn up in my jeans and my t-shirts, imagine the whole world in my head, pretend and just do it.
Chris, I really find that quite offensive. Sacrilege, in fact. Acting isn't about pretending at all, as I've already explained, and I'm sure our audience understand. It's about the thrill of excellence, Chris, and you don't get that overnight.
Right, well, Trevor, that's very interesting because, for instance, people may not know this from the broadcast because they can't see us, they can only hear us, obviously. You're, in fact, 6'7". Now, how tall exactly is Magnus Lafleur, the memory gnome?
Well, Magnus Lafleur, the memory gnome, is exactly 3'6" tall, Chris.
So, with your belief of being Magnus, you are Magnus Lafleur, memory gnome, who is 3'6". Is that correct, Trevor?
Chris, I can see that we're going around here in circles. Chris, I want to share something with you, but I want you to have an open heart and an open mind. Chris, this I want to share with you now. Truth is reality, Chris.
Well, could I share something else with you, Trevor, from my point of view, my rationale, my philosophy? Now, we've made 2 recordings together in which you have been Magnus Lafleur memory gnome, and for each of that time you've always appeared to me to be entirely 6'7", but the listening audience does see you as 3'6". I agree there. And there's a reason for this. And it's not because of your belief of your height, but at one point, as you first appear as Magnus the memory gnome, I say, you're a funny little fellow, thus endowing you with the height. And then in the mind's eye of the audience, and radio, as Samuel Beckett says, is theatre of the mind, they see you as 3'6". Et voila.
Well, look, Chris, that's all very well. I think I've explained myself sufficiently. I am rather tired, and I have a big meeting interview to go. Look forward to the National, actually. I've got a train to catch. I think that's just about enough. I've said my piece.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Trevor Scales, method actor.
Yeah, and thanks for everything, Chris. It's great.
This interview, Trevor Scales, an actor prepares, is a Final Edit production. Final Edit is a company created by Chris Orr to create projects created by Chris Orr. The artistic director of Final Edit is Chris Orr. This podcast was created, directed and produced by Chris Orr and edited by Ben Crawford. The Memory Gnome Saga series of podcasts is also a Final Edit production, directed and produced by Chris Orr and edited by Ben Crawford. The Memory Gnome Saga series of podcasts stars Chris Orr and introduces Trevor Scales.